A star young defenseman in the NHL has just signed a lucrative new extension. We're going to talk about how that affects the Islanders' negotiations with Noah Dobson, plus some Islander prospects shining at the summer showcase. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the midweek edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We have a lot to discuss on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, you can email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR vs NYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That's hirings, firings, trade rumors, the draft, free agency. If it's happening to the New York Islanders, we'll have it covered for you here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it's always great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. We have got a lot to discuss on today's show. And the first thing is this, generally late July and August are the quietest times of the NHL calendar. Usually not a lot is happening, but this last week or two, we've seen some pretty big moves. I mean, the Flyers signed Travis Konecny to a long extension. We had the Islanders, obviously, reaching an agreement before arbitration with Oliver Wahlstrom, and we'll talk a little bit more about that coming up a little bit later. But now some big news that will affect the New York Islanders, albeit indirectly, but I think it will have an impact. And that is this, that the Minnesota Wild on Monday reached an 8-year extension with defenseman Brock Faber, and it is an 8-year deal with an AAV of $8.5 million. Now, for those of you who may not be as familiar with Brock Faber, he is 21 years old. He'll turn 22 in August. He was a second-round pick of the LA Kings, got traded to the Minnesota Wild before he ever suited up for LA as part of the deal that sent Kevin Fiala the other way back to the Kings. And now, after last year, he had his first complete season in the NHL, played in all 82 games, finished second in the Calder voting as Rookie of the Year, had 8 goals, 39 assists, 47 points, 26 penalty minutes. 3 of his 8 goals came on the power play, as did 13 of his 39 assists. He had 136 shots on goal, and most importantly, perhaps, almost 25 minutes per game of ice time, 24 minutes, 58 seconds. And look, there's still time left on Faber's entry-level contract. Those are 3-year deals, so, this deal won't even kick in right away. But here's the key. Brock Faber, second in the Calder, really looked the part. Like, you get the feeling that he has only scratched the surface of what he's going to be capable of doing. And, he had a cap hit last year and of $925,000. And it's interesting that the Wild wasted no time in identifying the fact that Brock Faber is, a guy they think is a cornerstone piece of their team. And there's no bridge deal. There's nothing. They just go straight with the $8.5 million per year extension for Faber. Well, here's how this affects the Islanders. If I'm representing Noah Dobson, I look at the numbers, and here's what I see. Noah Dobson had more points and more goals than Faber. Minutes per game, Faber was 24.58. Brock Faber, Noah Dobson, 24.31. The shots on goal were roughly comparable. The power play numbers, obviously Faber had more goals, more assists going the other way for Noah Dobson. So, there's a little comparison there. But again, here are two young, talented offensive defensemen. And Noah Dobson is going to say, you know what? If Brock Faber, off one season where he scored, 28 points less than I did, or 23 points less than I did, is making $8.5 million a year. I am asking for more than that, or at least as much as that. I'll ask for more and come back to $8.5–9 million a year based on what Faber is making. And you know what? His agent wouldn't be wrong. So here's the sort of way this works. Noah Dobson is still under contract with the New York Islanders this season. He is scheduled, according to Puckpedia, to earn a reasonable $4 million this year. After this season, he is still only a restricted free agent, although he will have arbitration rights. He is not eligible to become an unrestricted free agent until after the 2026-2027 season. So this year and 2 more years. So Lou Lamoriello, looking at this situation, has options. He can go the arbitration route or negotiate a 1-year deal or a 2-year deal, which would be basically another bridge deal, and then hope. Or you sign that extension now. He doesn't have to be before the end of this season, but you don't want to let Noah Dobson hit the market. And would it surprise me if a team tried to put an offer sheet up for Noah Dobson next summer if he's a restricted free agent? Not at all. And then as the Islanders are concerned, you lose control over the negotiations and over the number. And a team with a lot of cap space could poison pill it, put a lot of money in the first year of a contract, make it more difficult for the Islanders to match it. And then, that would just be a disaster if you lose Noah Dobson. Dobson is clearly someone the Islanders are looking to build around. Is he perfect? No. Noah Dobson still needs to improve a little defensively. I think his vision as a power play quarterback needs to be a little bit better. But here is a 24-year-old player on a team full of older guys who is still just reaching his prime, who just had 70 points in 79 games last year. That is the highest point total for a New York Islanders defenseman since Hall of Famer Dennis Potvin. That is elite company. The longer you wait if you're Lou Lamoriello, the more two things happen. Another young defenseman could sign a contract that raises the bar even more. That's the bad news. The good news is, theoretically, the salary cap should continue to go up. And after next year, in theory, and we know Lou Lamoriello may re-sign some of these guys, but in theory, Kyle Palmieri, Brock Nelson, Hudson Fasching, Mike Riley, all come off the books, in theory, after next season, as does Alexander Romanov, who is also a restricted free agent. So Lou is going to have choices that he's going to have to make. And I get the feeling, knowing Lou, he's going to re-sign one of Nelson and Palmieri, if not both, if he can. What we don't know how much the salary cap is going to go up. The Islanders right now have no cap space to work with at all. But again, we're talking about an extension here. We are not talking about a deal that would affect this season's cap. The numbers just keep going up. The cap goes up as well, if, barring another catastrophe like COVID, which sent the cap tumbling. But overall, the Islanders also might be able to buy out or trade some of the bad contracts like Anders Lee or J.G. Pageau at the trade deadline this year or before the draft next year, because there's less term left on those deals. So we'll see whether Lou Lamoriello opts to sign Noah Dobson to a new deal this offseason, during the season, or whether he waits for next offseason. But hopefully, Lou doesn't wait too long, because as I said, with each new contract that is signed, a higher benchmark is set, and Noah Dobson, he's going to get paid. The question is when, how much, and by who. So we'll see what happens with Noah Dobson and Alexander Romanov. We're going to keep an eye on both of those situations. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. The Junior World Summer Showcase going on right now, and some Islanders prospects are participating in that. We'll fill you in on how they're doing. We'll discuss the second buyout window, which is now closed on the Islanders. And yes, for our Islanders birthday of the day, an offensive defenseman who was better known as a Detroit Red Wing, but did play 33 games for the Islanders in 1988-89. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all this and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, and that makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and you get their lowest price guarantee. So Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time is the view from your seat. You go on the app, and before you purchase the tickets, you get to see a panoramic view of what you'll see from your seat, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we all know the World Juniors, they take place in December and January. And yet, there is the World Junior Summer Showcase, and that's going on right now. So there are some Islanders prospects who are participating. So it runs from July 26th to August 3rd, and it's held in Plymouth, Michigan, and it's essentially a way for the coaching staff and the scouts to evaluate some of the players who are candidates to represent their countries. Cole Eiserman, first-round pick of the Islanders this year, he is participating, and it was interesting to see how he was used by the coaching staff, and this, to me, is very encouraging. He was on the power play. He was on the penalty kill, and even was put on the ice in some key defensive situations. So that really is what you want to see. You want to see a guy become more of a 200-foot player. You want to see him round out his game and just be more effective without the puck, without losing some of that, great shot, the ability to score, the natural ability. You want to see him take that and basically build on it so he can do it at the NHL level. He's also hitting, and throwing hits in these competitions is also excellent. So overall, just great to see Cole Eiserman not just playing, but playing well at the Summer Showcase. Also participating is Jesse Nurmi, who is playing with Finland. And in Finland's second game, they lost to Team USA's Blue Squad. But Nurmi for Finland had a goal, and he had an assist playing on the second line on left wing. And it was a strange goal because it basically, the puck bounced off the back of his helmet and into the net. But you know what? You sort of take that and run with it, because that means he wasn't afraid to get in front of the net, to battle for position. And, you're going to want your forwards to go to those dirty areas and score a few goals like that. Look, you don't want him to get hit in the head, but you do want pucks to deflect off his body or his stick and, be able to pick up sort of goals in that way. So that was certainly encouraging. And again, Nurmi playing well, and that is an important factor in, again, the development of some of these players. And he also picked up an assist shortly after the goal, making a very, very nice pass to Topias Heinonen, and that really did well. So basically, the Daily Faceoff said that Nurmi had a decent first game, but he had a nice 2-point effort with a goal and an assist in the second game. He scored the first one for the Finns and then made a couple of great passes with Topias Heinonen to make it 5-3. Nurmi should be leaned on as one of Finland's better players at the main event, but even more so here because the Finns are missing some key players. So again, to see a couple of Islanders prospects not just playing, but playing well, and just sort of building on the skill sets that they have been scouted for, and to try to improve in some of the areas that were considered questionable for them, that is very encouraging. And again, the summer showcase and the World Juniors in December and January. They're just excellent opportunities for young players to compete against the best young players in their age group in the world and have a showcase in front of scouts and in front of coaches to play against the highest level of competition available at this stage in their career. So, number one, it's great that your players are even selected. And then number two, having them play well in this tournament is also very exciting and very important. So, a couple of Islanders picks, including Cole Eiserman, their first pick in this year's draft, looking good at the summer showcase, and that's what we as Islander fans want to hear. We have got more to get to on today's show. The Islanders, they opened up a second buyout window when they went to arbitration with Oliver Wahlstrom. We'll talk about what happened. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So as I mentioned, there is a second buyout window that opens up for teams that have arbitration. And the Islanders opted not to use that window. It was 48 hours after the agreement between Oliver Wahlstrom and the Islanders was reached. And again, I was not surprised that Lou Lamoriello did not choose to use the second buyout window. Buyouts in the NHL, they'll save you a little bit of money on the front end. They will cost you a little bit of money, dead cap space, basically, on the back end. Now, the only players who were eligible for this buyout window that opened up on Sunday, they had to be making $4 million or more. So the players that everyone had been talking about were Anders Lee and J.G. Pageau. And again, both of those guys not performing up to their contracts. I mean, Lee earning $7 million a year, probably, not worth more than $4 million as far as his production is concerned, maybe 4.5. Pageau is earning $5 million, probably worth more like 3.5. But the Islanders opted not to do that. So if they would have bought out J.G. Pageau, you save $2.5 million. If you buy out Anders Lee, you save $3.45 million. Both of these players have 2 years left on their current deals. We'll see. As of right now, the Islanders are $950,000 over the salary cap if Oliver Wahlstrom is included on the roster. We are still waiting to see if the Islanders decide to make a trade for Wahlstrom. And, the thing is this. You're at a point where the Islanders, it's better for Oliver Wahlstrom if the Islanders can work out a trade before training camps open up. That gives Wally a chance to be in training camp with his new team from day one, not to be behind as far as being evaluated by his new coach, getting to know his new teammates, the system that the coach wants to play. Those are the on-ice things. Off the ice, obviously, he needs to, rent an apartment or a house, find a place to live, figure out, where everything is in the new place, new city, new town. The Islanders don't have to make a move until opening day when rosters are set before the season starts. You're allowed to be 10% over the cap up until then. Once the opening night rosters are set, you have to be cap compliant. But the longer the delay, if you get past, the opening of training camps, which is roughly September 10th or 12th or something in that range, depending on the team, the longer you go into that, past that, the tougher it is for Oliver Wahlstrom. And, Lou Lamoriello essentially said when he made a qualifying offer for Oliver Wahlstrom, I don't want to give him away for nothing, but he will try, he said, basically, to accommodate a trade. Well, guess what? If you give him away for nothing, rather, if you can't work out a deal and the Islanders don't do something to free up cap space, they may have to send Wahlstrom down to the minors, which means putting him through waivers, which means they run the risk of losing him for nothing. If you haven't noticed, there's not a lot of leverage that the Islanders have in trying to make any kind of a deal for Oliver Wahlstrom. And so the question becomes, what could you get for Wally if you trade him? Or do you throw in a player like Wahlstrom into another deal to sweeten the pot a little bit to try to either not have to throw in a draft pick or not have to retain salary on a guy like Anders Lee or J.G. Pageau or any other player the Islanders might consider trading in order to free up cap space? Again, we're going to keep our eye on that situation throughout the offseason. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And Tuesday was the 68th birthday of former Islanders defenseman Reed Larson. Larson, a second-round pick of the Red Wings in 1976, also drafted by the Minnesota Fighting Saints of the WHA. Spent 3 years at the University of Minnesota, 6 foot, 195 pounds, a native of Minneapolis. Made his NHL debut in 1976-77 with the Red Wings. Played in Detroit through the 85-86 season when he was traded to Boston. Briefly played for Edmonton and then joined the Islanders for part of the 88-89 season. Had 7 goals and 20 points in 33 games. Played a little for Minnesota, the North Stars, that is, and the Buffalo Sabres for just 1 game before finishing his career in Italy. Overall, Reed Larson, a solid offensive defenseman, 222 goals and 685 points in 904 career NHL games, 4 goals, 11 points in 32 playoff games in the NHL, but none of those with the New York Islanders. One of his better games with the Islanders, this one's easy, February 16th, 1989 at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Islanders hosting the St. Louis Blues. Greg Millen, the goalie for the Blues. Kelly Rudy is guarding the goal for the New York Islanders. And after one period, it's a 1-1 game when our Islanders' birthday of the day, Reed Larson, scores on the power play in the second. 5:08 mark. Brian Trottier and Mikko Makala with the assist. That made it 2-1 Islanders. And the Islanders basically made it 4-1 late in the period when Reed Larson assists on a goal by Randy Wood. Pat LaFontaine, the other helper on that one. And then Larson with another assist on a power play goal by Brad Delgarno. Again, Pat LaFontaine with the other assist. Islanders beat the Blues by a score of 7-3. Greg Millen chased Vincent Riando, finishes up. But for Reed Larson, our Islanders' birthday of the day, a goal, 2 assists. He was a +1. He had 2 penalty minutes, 2 shots on goal. And he basically helped the Islanders to the win. 26 saves for Kelly Rudy, 2 goals, and 2 assists for Pat LaFontaine. But overall, a very strong performance by Reed Larson. Reed Larson, 68 years old on Tuesday. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Every day as we'll be back Friday with all the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. And if anything happens with Oliver Wahlstrom, if anything big happens in the Beauty League where some Islanders are playing up in Minnesota, we will have all the latest for you right here on Locked On Islanders. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.